put your bag through the scanner, expecting to be through in a minute, and instead TSA pulls it aside and starts opening it because of one completely normal thing you packed without a second thought. That's the part more travelers are running into now. It is not always about carrying something banned. Sometimes it is just an item that looks dense, unclear, or badly packed on the scanner, and that alone is enough to slow everything down. So in this video, I am breaking down 15 everyday items that can get flagged, delayed, taken, or turn into a much bigger problem in 2026, and how to pack them so your bag does not end up open on the inspection table. And item 15 is where this stops being just a TSA problem, because once a border gets involved, a completely ordinary item can turn into something much more serious. Small souvenir jars, snow globes, and anything thick in a container can get treated like liquids or gels at security. What matters is usually the size of the container, not how much is left inside. So if that souvenir jar is labeled over 3.4 ounces or 100 milliliters, it can still get taken even when it looks almost empty. Snow globes run into the same problem. The very small ones can sometimes make it through if they fit inside your liquids bag. Bigger ones are where people get stuck. The other trap is anything thick in a jar or tub, like peanut butter, spreads, gooey snacks, or skincare. Once it is packed in glass or a container that is harder to read on the scanner, even harmless stuff can slow things down and get your bag pulled for a closer look. The easiest move is to check it or ship it home. If you need it in your carry-on, move it into travel-size containers and keep it in your liquids bag so it looks simple during screening. And if it is a medical liquid, keep it separate and tell them before the bag goes through, because that is a much easier conversation than having them stop your bag and ask later. And the next item wastes time in a way a lot of travelers never see coming. Foil-wrapped food gets bags pulled because foil makes the scanner image harder to read. A sandwich or burrito wrapped in foil can show up like one dense block instead of something with clear layers and edges. That is often enough to slow you down at security. And it is not just burritos. Thick stacks of protein bars, packed candy, or other dense snacks can create the same problem when everything is pressed into one tight shape. The easiest fix is to pack food in something clear and keep it near the top of your bag. That makes it easier to identify. And if they want to inspect it, you can pull it out fast instead of standing there while they dig through your carry-on. And powders can create an even bigger delay. Powders over about 12 ounces can trigger extra screening, especially if they are packed in unlabeled containers. The ones that get flagged most often are everyday powders like protein powder, ground coffee, pancake mix, formula, and supplements such as electrolyte or greens mixes. Once they are poured into a plain plastic tub or a Ziploc, they become much harder to identify quickly. That is why they often get swabbed, tested, or pulled for a closer look, especially when the container is large. The easiest way to avoid the delay is to keep powders in the original packaging whenever possible. If you transfer them, label them clearly, and if you are carrying a larger amount, keep it near the top of your bag so you can pull it out fast without turning a simple check into a full bag search. If it is something essential, like baby formula, keep it easy to reach and be ready to mention it before screening. And the next item causes problems for people who think they are being more organized. Unlabeled pill organizers are normal at home, but they can create problems once a border is involved. A case full of loose pills gives almost no context, so even routine medication or vitamins can lead to extra questions when no label is attached. In the US, TSA may ask and move on. The bigger issue is international travel, or even a connection through another country, where unlabeled medication can turn into a verification problem, especially if any prescription falls under controlled drug rules. The safest move is to keep prescriptions in the original pharmacy bottles and bring a printed medication list with the generic names. If you still want to use a travel organizer for convenience, keep the labeled bottles and that list in the same pouch so you can explain everything fast without digging through your bag. And the next item can raise questions even when it is packed for cultural or religious reasons. Incense, dried herbs, and spiritual powders are more likely to get flagged when they are packed in plain bags or unlabeled jars, especially on international routes or during transit. The problem is usually not the item itself. It is the lack of context. When security cannot tell what something is right away, that is when the questions start. The safest move is to keep these items in the original packaging whenever possible. If you repack them, label them clearly and keep everything together in one easy-to-reach pouch so you can show it without having your whole bag searched. And if someone asks, keep the explanation simple and calm. These are incense or herbs for cultural or religious use. Now we move into the category that catches even frequent travelers off guard: batteries and power banks. A power bank with a faded or missing label can become a problem fast, because if they cannot verify the watt hours, you may get delayed or told to leave it behind. As a general rule, power banks up to 100 watt hours are usually allowed in carry-on. Between 100 and 160 watt hours may require airline approval. Over 160 watt hours is generally not allowed for passengers. Since many power banks only show milliamp hours, a 27,000 milliamp hour battery at 3.7 volts is roughly around the 100 watt hour mark. But in real life, the bigger problem is often not the limit. It is the label. If the watt hour rating is scratched off, faded, or missing, that is where things get harder to verify quickly. The smartest move is to keep proof of the specs before the label becomes unreadable. Take a clear photo of the battery when it is new, and save a screenshot of the manufacturer's page or manual that shows the model and watt hours. If the label is already gone, replacing it with one that is clearly marked is usually the safer move. And do not forget the rule people still mess up: power banks and spare lithium batteries belong in your carry-on, not in checked luggage. So after this video, check the exact power bank you actually travel with. If you cannot clearly read the watt hours and cannot back it up with the model specs, fix that at home, not at the airport. And the next item catches people off guard because the problem is not the suitcase itself, but the battery built into it. Smart luggage feels like a genius upgrade until you get to check in and someone asks the one question that matters: can the battery come out? Because the issue is not the GPS or the fancy lock. It is the lithium battery safety rules. If your smart suitcase has a battery that cannot be removed easily by hand, without tools, you can end up stuck at the counter doing the worst kind of airport puzzle. Rule of thumb: if you need a screwdriver, treat it like it is not removable. I've seen someone crack open their suitcase right there at the counter, clothes everywhere, trying to reach the battery compartment while the line behind them kept growing. Not a fun moment. So do the check at home. If the battery pops out cleanly, remove it before you check the bag and bring it in the cabin like a spare battery, ideally with the terminals protected so it cannot short out. If it does not come out easily, make that suitcase carry-on only, or use a regular suitcase on trips where you are checking luggage. And speaking of design choices that create problems, let's talk about water bottles with hidden compartments. Bottles with hidden compartments, twist-off bases, or built-in storage spaces are more likely to get extra screening because they are not easy to clear quickly. What causes the delay is usually the design, not whether the bottle is empty. If the bottom unscrews or the bottle has a hidden space inside it, that is often enough to get a closer look. The smoothest option is to travel with a simple one-piece bottle with no hidden storage. And if you do bring one with a compartment, put it in its own bin and open it before anyone has to ask. That makes it much easier to clear without turning it into a whole inspection. And the next item is small, common, and much more complicated once international rules get involved. Vapes usually do not cause the biggest surprise at TSA. The bigger problem is airline lithium battery rules and international laws. Because a vape is a battery-powered device, it belongs in your carry-on, not in checked luggage. It should stay switched off, protected from turning on by accident, and it should never be used or charged on the plane. The bigger risk starts once international travel is involved because the same device can be treated very differently from one country to another, and that includes transit stops. Mexico is a good example, where recent enforcement warnings have made travelers pay a lot more attention to confiscation risk and possible penalties. So the safest move is to check the rules for every stop on your itinerary, including layovers. If you are not completely sure, leaving it at home is the least stressful option. And if you do bring it, keep it in your carry-on and make sure any pods or vape liquid follow the normal liquids rules. And the next item looks small and harmless until security sees it as something much more serious. Arc and plasma lighters are not treated like ordinary lighters. Because they use lithium batteries, they come with stricter travel rules. They belong in carry-on only. They need protection against accidental activation, and they should never be charged on the plane. The bigger surprise is that torch, jet, and blue flame lighters are not allowed in either carry-on or checked bags under US rules. If you want the least hassle, stick to one basic butane or Zippo-type lighter in your carry-on or on your person. And if your bag gets gate checked, take it out before the bag leaves your hands. And the next category causes trouble because it looks harmless right up until security sees it as a weapon. Toy weapons can still trigger extra screening, and realistic-looking replicas can create bigger problems than most travelers expect. TSA may allow many toy guns and toy weapons, but the final decision still comes down to the officer at the checkpoint. And the more realistic the item looks, the more likely it is to create a problem. That is why the smoother move is to put weapon-shaped toys and props in checked luggage from the start, especially if you are traveling with kids or heading to a convention. And if something looks even remotely realistic, assume it will get more attention. Lightsabers are one of those odd exceptions, but that should not make you feel safe about other weapon-shaped items. And the next category causes trouble because it is not packed on purpose. It is usually forgotten in the bag. Tactical pens, blade multi-tools, and other sharp everyday gadgets often get caught because people forget they are already in their daily bag. The usual problem is not packing them on purpose. It is reusing the same backpack, tote, or keychain you carry everywhere and forgetting what is still tucked inside. The items that cause the most trouble are usually small ones, especially tactical pens and multi-tools with blades, including the flat card-style versions people forget even have an edge. The fix is simple. Check your keychain, side pockets, and every small pouch before you leave for the airport. If it is sharp, pointy, or tactical looking, move it to checked luggage or leave it at home. And camping gear creates the same kind of problem, only with much higher stakes. Camping gear causes problems fast when it includes sharp hardware, fuel, or any stove with residue. Tent stakes are the easy one. TSA treats them like sharp objects, so they belong in checked baggage. And a carry-on full of stakes is asking for trouble. Fuel is the hard stop. Camp stove fuel is not allowed in either carry-on or checked baggage, and that includes canisters or gear with leftover fuel, vapor, or residue. The stove itself can also be a problem. It may be allowed only if it is completely empty and thoroughly cleaned with no fuel smell, vapor, or residue. And even then, it can still get extra scrutiny. The safest move is to check the sharp hardware. Never fly with fuel, and either deep clean the stove or plan to buy what you need after you land. And the next category is where a simple mistake can lead to fines, inspection, or a much bigger problem at the border. This is where TSA drops out and Customs or Agriculture inspection takes over. And a lot of people get caught by small things, not obvious ones. It is the apple from the lounge, the sandwich from the plane, or a forgotten piece of fruit sitting in a side pocket. The rule is simple. Declare agricultural items. That includes fruits, vegetables, plants, seeds, and certain foods that may contain restricted ingredients. If you do not declare them and they are found, CBP can issue a civil penalty, and there are real cases where it starts at $300. So do a quick check before you reach the line. Look through every pouch and side pocket and get rid of anything fresh you forgot you were carrying. If you are not sure, declare it. That usually leads to a quick inspection instead of a much worse conversation. And if you are carrying packaged food, keep it sealed in the original packaging. And the last item is where something that feels completely unrelated to TSA can turn into a serious border problem. Some items are completely normal at home and still become a serious problem the moment you cross into another country. One big category is counterfeit goods, especially fake designer bags, watches, wallets, or branded accessories. Those can be seized at the border, and any fine may be based on the value of the real item, not the cheap price you paid for the fake one. Another major trap is CBD and other cannabinoid products. They may feel ordinary in the US, but many countries treat anything cannabis-related as illegal or controlled, even when the label says THC-free. And transit can count too, so a layover does not always protect you. Then there's the highest risk category, weapons and restricted devices. That includes pepper spray, firearms, ammunition, and in some places even drones, which may require permits or trigger serious penalties. A lot of travelers get in trouble here because they reuse an old everyday bag or range bag and forget what is still sitting in a side pocket. So before any international trip, empty the bag you actually use, check every small pouch, and look at the rules for every country on your itinerary, including transit stops. If an item falls into a gray area, the safest move is simple: leave it at home. Most airport problems do not come from doing something outrageous. They come from one normal item that turns into a problem at the scanner or at the border. Check your bag before you leave home, not when someone else is opening it for you. Which one of these items do you think catches the most travelers off guard? Leave it in the comments. And if you want more smart travel tips without the confusion, hit like and subscribe.